Hello, Wellspring. This is going to be our reading from actually January 20th, Genesis 41. You have to forgive me. The kids were off school yesterday, and I was watching the inauguration, and just somehow this slipped my mind to get our daily reading in. So, sometimes you might forget to forgive yourself. Plug back in if you want to catch up, like we're going to do today. If you don't want to, or if you feel like you just want to start picking up back again where you are, it's okay. It's okay not to be perfect. So we're gonna go for yesterday's video or yesterday's reading today, and then in a little bit you'll see that I'm going to post today's reading as well. So this is for the January 20th, and we're in Genesis chapter 41. We're picking back up with Joseph's story. Remember, he has just interpreted the two dreams for the cupbearer and the baker. The cupbearer is returned to Pharaoh, and the baker is executed. And Joseph has asked the cupbearer to remember him so that perhaps he might tell Pharaoh about Joseph. And Scripture told us right at the end of chapter 41 that the cupbearer had forgotten Joseph. Now we're going to pick up in Genesis 41. We'll be reading from the NIV, and here we go. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the river bank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all of the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servant, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream that same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled." So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you, that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when out of the river came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. Then the lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after that they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before, and then I woke up. In my dream, I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing from a single stalk. After them 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me." Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are also 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterwards are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all of his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made known all of this to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift hand or foot in all of Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of the Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priestess of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, "It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." The second son he named Ephraim and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Sorry, sometimes scripture just hits you and it moves your heart, right? We'll pick back up in verse 53. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph had said, there was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold the grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was so severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. Yeah, a couple moments just moved my heart in that space. The lessons that Joseph learns in his journey are incredible. And though he's interpreted dreams and though he's been elevated, and God has blessed him, there's been tremendous suffering. There's been tremendous hardship in his life. Some of it due to his own doing, some of it due to the sins of others, some of it due to lies and deceit. But God worked all of it together to position him to be in a space to save an entire nation from a famine, and to save, in fact, the world from a severe famine, as the entire world came to Egypt to buy grain, because the plan that God laid out to Joseph and the position that God put Joseph in was for such a time as that, because God blessed his children. God blessed the world. God blessed Egypt. God blessed those who would have starved to death during a 7-year famine by putting Joseph in a space where he learned through humbling experiences, where he suffered greatly, but God proved his faithfulness, where he went from perhaps being arrogant to being humble and moving to a space where he says, "I'm not the interpreter of dreams. It is God who interprets dreams." And then God elevates him, this man of humility, to a space where he can save the world. I don't know about you, church. That encourages me. It makes me say, you know what? if I will be patient, if I will wait on the Lord, if I will trust in his goodness, if I will persevere with diligence and integrity through the suffering, if I will work with integrity for the boss that doesn't treat me well, if I will do all things as if unto Christ, then God will work out his purpose for my life, whatever that is. And whatever that purpose is will be more fulfilling than anything I could have concocted or done on my own accord. And so I just want to encourage you today. Spend some time asking the Lord to help you see his path, to see his direction, and then spend some time saying to him, God, even if you choose not to reveal all of the answers to me, I will walk with humility. I will walk in holiness. I will choose obedience. I will choose to stay with you in spite of the hard things, in spite of the suffering, and to trust that your ways are above my ways. Your thoughts are above my thoughts. God bless you, Wellspring. Have a great day.